The Forgotten Battle, Manila 1945. Imagine waking up to explosions shaking the walls, to the ground trembling beneath your feet. Outside, soldiers are hunting civilians, women are being raped, families butchered. For hours, a deafening storm of bombs and gunfire drowns out every sound, until silence falls. And when the survivors finally step out of hiding, what they see is beyond horror: church floors soaked in blood, bodies everywhere, lives erased. In just 28 days, over 100,000 civilians were slaughtered. Manila, once called the Pearl of the Orient, was left in ruins, reduced to fire, ashes, and death. This was not a movie. Not a nightmare. This was Manila, 1945. And what happened here was one of the deadliest massacres of the Second World War. Yet I bet most of you have never even heard of it. Welcome to my channel. I'm Kirby Ario, your friendly Filipino historian. Today, we'll uncover one of the darkest and most forgotten tragedies of the war, the Battle of Manila, 1945. The battle ignites from February 3 to March 3, 1945. Manila became hell on earth. The Japanese army turned homes, churches, schools, and hospitals into killing grounds, while the US bombarded the city into rubble. By the end, Manila was unrecognizable, its people, culture, and history wiped away under the banner of liberation. When General Douglas MacArthur returned to the Philippines in 1944 with his famous promise, "I shall return," Filipinos expected salvation. Instead, Manila was drowned in blood. The Americans thought they could retake the capital quickly, as the Japanese had abandoned other cities without resistance. But this time, things were different. General Yamashita, commander of Japanese forces, had ordered his troops to retreat. But Rear Admiral Sanji Iwabachi defied him. With 16,000 men, he fortified Manila, planting mines, destroying bridges, and vowing to fight to the death. The city was turned into a death trap: no escape for civilians, no surrender for soldiers. The Americans walked into a nightmare, and more than 1 million Filipinos were trapped in the crossfire. Civilians in the crossfire. Imagine living in a city where every street is a battlefield. That was Manila in February 1945. My own grandfather, then a medical student at UST, saw this firsthand. When the wounded flooded into the university, students became doctors overnight. Classrooms turned into operating rooms. Day and night, under shellfire, they worked to save lives with what little they had. But across Manila, no one was safe. Survivors recalled fleeing through burning streets with children in their arms, while others screamed from homes consumed by flames. Japanese soldiers massacred thousands, while American bombardments turned districts into dust. By March, Manila was gone. The Manila massacre. What unfolded was not random violence, it was systematic. The Japanese army unleashed deliberate, calculated atrocities. Families slaughtered inside their homes. Women raped, mutilated, then burned. Priests, nuns, and doctors executed. Hospitals turned into execution sites. Civilians bayoneted, shot, or tied together and machine-gunned into the Pasig River. Bodies drifted downstream for days. At St. Paul's College, nuns were raped and murdered, then burned alive. At De La Salle, more than 70 civilians, including children, were killed inside the chapel. Even Red Cross doctors and nurses were tortured before execution. No church, no school, no hospital was spared. The brutality defied imagination. Manila became a graveyard. Liberation or destruction. As horrifying as Japanese atrocities were, the US liberation also left devastation. Unlike Paris, which the Allies carefully preserved, MacArthur chose overwhelming force. Artillery and bombs rained down on Manila, leveling entire districts. Historians estimate that up to 40 of civilian deaths came from US firepower. Hospitals were obliterated, heritage sites destroyed, neighborhoods incinerated. Intramuros, Escolta, the National Library, the National Archives, all reduced to ashes. Centuries of history erased overnight. This was not inevitable. It was a choice. And that choice cost Manila its soul. Manila before the war. To grasp the loss, we must remember what Manila once was. Before the war, Manila stood as the Pearl of the Orient. A crossroads of cultures, a thriving hub of trade and heritage. Escolta, Asia's Wall Street, boomed with Art Deco architecture. Intramuros stood proud, a walled city of churches and palaces. The National Library and Archives held centuries of Filipino history. In 1945, all of it vanished. Nearly 1 million books and manuscripts, records of our ancestors, our laws, our family histories, were burned to dust. Manila wasn't just destroyed. Its memory was erased. The forgotten Hiroshima. So why is Manila's tragedy barely remembered compared to Hiroshima or Nanjing? Because after the war, both the US and Japan had reasons to bury it. For America, it was easier to call it a Japanese atrocity than to admit thousands also died from US bombs. For Japan, Manila was an inconvenient reminder of its army's final brutality. No apologies, no reparations, just silence. Unlike Warsaw or Hiroshima, which were rebuilt and remembered, Manila was left broken. Post-war leaders chose modernization over restoration. The grand boulevards, plazas, and historic buildings were replaced by highways and concrete. The Paris of Asia lost not just its architecture, but its very soul. Remembering Manila, 100,000 innocent lives. A city in ashes. A tragedy the world forgot. It wasn't until 1995, 50 years later, that survivors built a memorial for Manila. And even today, this story is rarely told beyond our shores. But Manila did rise, not because justice was served, but because of the resilience of its people. Survivors rebuilt. Families endured. Guerrillas, doctors, students, and ordinary civilians refused to give up. That spirit is Manila's true legacy. Today, we honor them, not as victims, but as heroes. Their memory is our duty to keep alive. Because as long as we remember, Manila lives. Not just in ruins, but in us, in the soul of a people who refuse to be erased. If your family has stories, or if I missed something, share it in the comments. This is not just history, it's our history. And together, we can make sure Manila 1945 is never forgotten.